I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped outside. The street was too quiet. No dogs barking, no kids riding bikes, no lawnmowers humming in the distance. Just still air, heavy, like it was waiting for something to snap. Across the road, a pickup truck I'd never seen before sat parked at an angle, engine still ticking from a recent drive. Two men were inside, both staring straight ahead, not moving, not talking. Their windows were down, but they pretended not to see me. People don't act like that by accident. I took one step toward my car, and that tiny movement changed everything. The passenger door opened. A tall man climbed out, face blank, posture stiff, like he'd practiced this moment in a mirror. His partner followed, circling around the truck, both of them trying too hard to look calm. That's when I noticed their eyes. Not angry. Not nervous. Focused. Like I was a target. And only when the sunlight hit metal did I see it, the gun in his hand, rising slowly. They thought they were the hunters. They were wrong. And they still didn't understand why pointing a weapon at me was the biggest mistake of their lives. I've had guns pointed at me before. That's the unfortunate truth about serving in the military for years. You learn what fear is, and then you learn how to put it away, fold it neatly, lock it inside some quiet room in your mind. But there's something different about a man pointing a gun at you in broad daylight, on a normal street, on a quiet Wednesday morning where nothing should be happening except birds arguing over tree branches. It feels stupid. And dangerous in the worst, most unnecessary way. I was halfway down my driveway when Mason's partner stepped out of the pickup truck. He kept his stance wide, shoulders stiff, hands shaking just enough to betray that he wasn't used to real risk. The gun in his grip wobbled slightly, the sunlight flickering off the metal like a warning nobody asked for. "Don't move," he said. His voice cracked on the word move. Never a good sign. I stopped walking, not because he told me to, but because I needed a moment to decide whether this was going to end calmly or with someone crying on the pavement. And believe me, if someone cried, it wasn't going to be me. I raised my hands just enough so he'd feel like he had control. "You sure you want to do this?" I asked quietly. My tone wasn't mocking, just tired. Tired of stupidity. Tired of grown adults who had the judgment of sugared-up toddlers. His partner, Mason, walked around the front of the truck, jaw clenched, sunglasses too big for his face. He always wore mirrored aviators even though he absolutely did not have the swagger to pull them off. He wasn't pointing a gun, but he did have something almost as dangerous, a bruised ego and the confidence of a man who had never once been told no in a meaningful way. "Benjamin Reed," Mason said, like he was calling attendance. "You're in violation." "Of what?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he nodded at the guy with the gun. That told me everything. They weren't here to talk. They weren't here for a warning. They were here because they thought intimidation would work. My heartbeat didn't even pick up. If anything, I felt calmer. Because I already knew something they didn't know. This was all being recorded from two angles, and every second they dug themselves deeper. I took one slow breath. Then another. And while they tried to hold on to their fragile authority, I thought back to the real reason I'd come to this neighborhood in the first place, and how the road to this absurd, dangerous moment began with something as small as wanting peace. After 22 years in the military, I'd earned two things, a quiet life and the right to drink my morning coffee without needing to watch my back. Oak Ridge Meadows looked like paradise, an affordable home, clean sidewalks, a lake nearby, and supposedly a friendly community. I should have known it was too good to be true. Every paradise has a snake. And ours wore pastel blazers. Her name was Tina Cartwright, the HOA president, self-proclaimed guardian of order, peace, aesthetics, and whatever other nonsense she cooked up during her afternoon wine sessions. I met her on my second day. I was on my porch, assembling a simple wooden bench. Nothing fancy. Something you'd see in any normal front yard. I hadn't even tightened the final screws when I heard heels clicking up my driveway. "New homeowner?" she asked, flashing a smile that was 80% teeth and 0% warmth. "Benjamin," I said, shaking her hand. "Just getting settled." She nodded once, sharply, like a judge confirming a sentence. "We prefer uniformity here," Tina said. "Consistency. Predictability. Your bench, it's not approved." I actually turned around to check if someone was recording a prank show. "It's a bench," I said, half laughing. "Yes," she replied, "and that's exactly the problem." She handed me a brochure. The Oak Ridge Meadows Standards of Excellence, 32 pages of color-coded restrictions on everything from grass length to curtain shades to the acceptable height of potted plants. I swear there was even a section about the visual harmony of mailboxes. I'd survived combat zones, harsh winters, and bureaucratic red tape thicker than steel. But this woman was something else. She gave one more icy smile before turning to leave. "Oh, and Benjamin. We will be watching." I remember thinking she was exaggerating. I was wrong. What started as one petty rule became 5. Then 10. Then daily visits, weekly warnings, and letters that sounded more like threats disguised in floral stationery. Still, I tried to be patient. I tried to be polite. I didn't want conflict. But the HOA wasn't the real problem. The real problem was the group of grown men Tina turned into her personal enforcement squad, Mason and his little band of security volunteers. That's where everything shifted from annoying to dangerous. I swear, Mason's entire personality sprang from one source: rejection from the local police academy. Twice. He was the type of guy who bought tactical gear online, wore sunglasses indoors, and narrated his own actions like he was in an action movie. If he carried groceries, he'd mutter, "Package secured." If he got out of his truck, he'd say, "Moving to Zone 2." A walking, talking wannabe SWAT officer. At first, he tried to be friendly. "Mr. Reed, we run a tight ship around here," he told me one morning while snapping gum like it was punishment. "As members of the HOA Safety Division." "Safety Division?" I asked. "Did you guys vote on that?" He hesitated. "It's, unofficial." Which meant he made it up. Fast forward 3 weeks and they were issuing citations for everything. Trash can too close to curb. Fence paint insufficiently neutral. Unauthorized breeze block pattern visible from sidewalk. Military truck-like vehicle parked in driveway. It was literally just my pickup. They slid notices under my door. They took pictures of my property. They waited outside in their truck like budget mall cops. And every time, I stayed calm. I documented everything. Made copies of every citation, recorded every conversation. It was annoying, yes, but manageable. Until the day they banged on my door at 6 a.m. demanding to inspect my backyard for safety violations. I opened the door in silence, blocking their path. "No," I said. "Sir, this is mandatory," Mason began. "It's illegal," I corrected. He flushed red. "This is your first warning," I said evenly. "If you or anyone from the HOA steps on my property without permission again, we will have a different kind of conversation. Do you understand?" His jaw tightened. His partner swallowed hard. But instead of backing down, they doubled down. Their egos wouldn't let them drop it. And that ego is what eventually walked them into the stupidest decision of their lives. It was a hot afternoon, one of those days where even the wind feels exhausted and the sun presses against your skin like a heavy hand. The air shimmered over the pavement, making everything look slightly distorted, as if the world itself warned me that something bad was coming. I had just grabbed my keys and was heading out for groceries when the rumble of an engine drifted down the street. Mason's truck. The sound alone made my shoulders stiffen. I watched as they parked sideways across the end of my driveway, blocking my exit completely. Not subtly. Not politely. Like a declaration. 2 doors opened. Mason stepped out first, chest puffed, jaw locked, his ridiculous aviators hiding the insecurity behind them. His partner came next, moving slower, hand already near his waistband. That was my first sign something was off. Usually, they played pretend cop. Today, their faces were different, too serious, too focused. I started walking down my driveway. Calm. Controlled. Afternoon, I said. They didn't return the greeting. Mason took 2 steps forward. Mr. Reed, you're being cited again. For what? I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked to his partner, who pulled out a gun. A real one. Black. Compact. Loaded. My body didn't freeze. My mind didn't race. That little room inside my head, the place where fear sits, stayed closed. Training kicked in. Awareness sharpened. Vision narrowed, but not in panic, in calculation. His hands shook. His breathing was uneven. His stance was sloppy. This is a really bad idea, I said. Shut up, he snapped, voice cracking. Just do what we say. Mason's voice wavered, too. You're being detained. For what? Again, no answer. That told me everything. They had no plan. No legal reason. No script. Just raw ego and a weapon they didn't know how to control. And that ego is what eventually walked them into the stupidest decision of their lives. It was a hot afternoon, one of those days where even the wind feels exhausted and the sun presses against your skin like a heavy hand. The air shimmered over the pavement, making everything look slightly distorted, as if the world itself warned me that something bad was coming. I had just grabbed my keys and was heading out for groceries when the rumble of an engine drifted down the street. Mason's truck. The sound alone made my shoulders stiffen. I watched as they parked sideways across the end of my driveway, blocking my exit completely. Not subtly. Not politely. Like a declaration. 2 doors opened. Mason stepped out first, chest puffed, jaw locked, his ridiculous aviators hiding the insecurity behind them. His partner came next, moving slower, hand already near his waistband. That was my first sign something was off. Usually, they played pretend cop. Today, their faces were different, too serious, too focused. I started walking down my driveway. Calm. Controlled. Afternoon, I said. They didn't return the greeting. Mason took 2 steps forward. Mr. Reed, you're being cited again. For what? I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked to his partner, who pulled out a gun. A real one. Black. Compact. Loaded. My body didn't freeze. My mind didn't race. That little room inside my head, the place where fear sits, stayed closed. Training kicked in. Awareness sharpened. Vision narrowed, but not in panic, in calculation. His hands shook. His breathing was uneven. His stance was sloppy. This is a really bad idea, I said. Shut up, he snapped, voice cracking. Just do what we say. Mason's voice wavered, too. You're being detained. For what? Again, no answer. That told me everything. They had no plan. No legal reason. No script. Just raw ego and a weapon they didn't know how to control. The partner moved the gun higher, aiming at my chest. Last chance, he said. I sighed. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just tired. You point a gun at a guy who knows exactly how to take it away, I said, and I promise you, this ends worse for you than for me. They hesitated. A full second. In that moment, they had a window to walk away. A tiny, fragile moment where they could have apologized, backed down, blamed the heat, said it was a misunderstanding, anything. But ego is louder than reason. Mason leaned forward. Get on your knees. I shook my head slowly. No. Their faces twitched. Their confidence cracked. I'm going to say this once, I said, voice low and steady. Lower the weapon. Step back. And get in your truck. Because if you don't, I won't have to hurt you, but you will regret what happens next. The partner's grip tightened. His finger trembled on the trigger. And just like that, the line was crossed. They made their choice. And I made mine. The partner's hand jerked. Not a smooth, trained movement. Not even a deliberate one. Just a sharp, panicked twitch, exactly the kind that ends with someone dead for no reason. The gun dipped sideways for a split second, and that tiny mistake was all I needed. I stepped off the line of fire, pivoting sharply, my body moving like it had done this 1,000 times, because it had. My right hand came up fast. My fingers locked around his wrist. I twisted. A short cry tore out of him as the gun pointed toward the ground. Before he could recover, I drove my knee into his stomach. Air whooshed out of him in a pathetic gasp, and the gun slipped from his hand. I kicked it away. Everything happened in maybe 3 seconds, but to someone untrained, it probably looked like a blur. Mason panicked. Hey! HOA, he shouted, charging me like a linebacker who'd never actually played football in his life. His boots hammered the pavement, his sunglasses slipping down his nose, his face red with fear and embarrassment. I didn't hit him. I didn't need to. He lunged, I sidestepped. One hand caught his arm, and his own momentum did the rest. He slammed into the side of his truck with a grunt. Before he could rebound, I hooked a foot behind his leg and swept him down. He hit the pavement hard. A few neighbors were already outside, phones raised, faces wide with shock, some whispering, some just frozen. It's funny how people react when real danger shows up in a place where the biggest excitement is usually a stray raccoon. The partner was on the ground, coughing, groaning, holding his stomach like I'd rearranged his organs. Mason tried to push himself up, but his arms were jelly. You're done, I told him calmly. No yelling. No threats. Just a simple truth. He looked up at me, eyes wide, finally understanding that this wasn't a game he could win by puffing his chest. From behind the phones and fences, the neighbors stared in stunned silence as the 2 wannabe cops lay sprawled on the asphalt, one wheezing, one defeated. The aftermath wasn't loud. It was quiet. Almost unsettlingly quiet. And in that silence, you could feel the shift, the moment everyone realized this wasn't just an HOA dispute anymore. This was real danger. Real consequences. And the real law was about to get involved. The first siren cut through the air less than 5 minutes later. Fast response. Someone must have called in, man with a gun, and, well, that gets attention. I stepped back from the 2 men, put my hands behind my head, and knelt on the driveway without being told. The neighbors watching probably expected me to yell or argue, but anyone with experience knows, when the real police show up, you make their job easier, not harder. 2 officers approached cautiously, weapons drawn but steady, not shaking, not panicked. Sir, keep your hands where they are, one said. Already there, I answered. They cuffed me efficiently. No rough handling, no attitude, just protocol. Exactly how it should be. Meanwhile, Mason and his partner were getting medical attention. One officer checked the partner's wrist and muttered, "Yup, that's broken." Mason was still whimpering like someone stole his lunch money. The officers looked around at the phones, the neighbors, the discarded gun on the ground. They realized quickly that this wasn't the simple scene they expected. Sheriff Daniels arrived 10 minutes later. Big guy, slow steps, an expression like he'd seen every brand of stupidity the county had to offer, and was tired of all of it. He motioned for the officers to lift me up. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Fine," I said. They pointed a gun at me. His eyes flicked to the partner, on a stretcher, then to Mason, sitting on the curb, defeated. "That true?" he asked them. He attacked us." Mason cried, pointing dramatically, like a kid blaming the dog for eating his homework. The sheriff didn't react. Just turned to the neighbors. A wave of hands shot up. Phones angled. Voices spoke at once. He had the gun. They blocked his driveway. Mason's guy aimed first. "I have it on video." Sheriff Daniels nodded, then looked back at me. "You want to tell me what happened?" he asked. I told him everything. Calmly. Clearly. Step by step. No embellishment. When I finished, the sheriff exhaled slowly. "Military?" he asked. 22 years, I said. "What branch?" "Army." His expression softened, just a little. "Makes sense." 2 paramedics loaded the partner into the ambulance. Mason refused the stretcher but looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole and stay there. The sheriff tapped the toe of his boot against the pavement, thinking. "You know," he said, "if you weren't trained, both of those idiots would be dead right now." "Yeah," I replied. "I know. And if they were actually trained," he continued, "you'd be dead." I nodded. "I know that too." He scratched his chin. "Well, this is going to be one hell of a report." The truth unraveled faster than anyone expected. By the next morning, both men were in the hospital, one with a broken wrist and bruised ribs, the other with a concussion. While being questioned, they cracked immediately. No pressure needed. They weren't loyal soldiers. They weren't professional anything. They were just 2 insecure guys who got in over their heads. And when the sheriff asked who put them up to this, they didn't hesitate. "It was Tina," Mason confessed. "She told us he was a danger," the partner added. "She said she'd protect us legally. She said he was armed all the time. She paid us." "Paid?" "She paid them to intimidate me. To detain me. To scare me into compliance." It didn't take long for the sheriff's deputies to show up at Tina's house. From what the neighbors told me, she answered the door with hair curlers in, wearing a floral robe and holding a glass of white wine even though it was 9 a.m. Her voice carried all the way down the block. "This is outrageous. I run this neighborhood. You can't arrest me, I'm the HOA president." But they could. And they did. The charges piled up quickly. Conspiracy to commit assault. Hiring unlicensed security personnel. Coordinating an armed confrontation. Reckless endangerment. Fraud. Turns out she'd been misusing HOA funds too. Within hours, news spread across Oak Ridge Meadows like wildfire. Neighbors whispered on lawns. Group chats blew up. Old grudges resurfaced. Old fears dissolved. Videos circulated. And in every one of them, Tina's little empire looked like a collapsing sandcastle. By the end of the week, the HOA board voted to suspend her indefinitely. Then permanently. Half the board resigned. The other half denied knowing anything, even though they absolutely did. The HOA wasn't dead. But it was definitely coughing blood. A week later, I sat across from Sheriff Daniels in his office while he reviewed the final report. "You're cleared," he said. "Self-defense. Clean and simple." I nodded once. "Appreciate it." He leaned back in his chair. "You know. I've been sheriff here 12 years. Never seen anything quite like this." "Me neither," I admitted. He chuckled. "You're calm for someone who nearly got killed. 22 years of practice. Fair." He closed the file gently. Oak Ridge Meadows is going to be quieter now. People saw what unchecked authority can turn into. Sometimes it takes a moment like this to reset a community. I walked out of the sheriff's office feeling lighter. Not proud, not triumphant, just relieved. The neighborhood settled into a new rhythm over the next few weeks. People waved more often. The HOA backed off. Mason and his partner moved away quietly after recovering. Tina faced a mountain of charges. And for the first time since moving in, my mornings actually felt peaceful. Like the life I came here to find was finally within reach. But every now and then, when I sit on my porch with a cup of coffee, I think about that day, the heat, the truck, the gun, the choices that brought it all to a head. And I can't help asking myself, how far should a person go to defend their peace? Because sometimes peace isn't something you're handed. Sometimes, you have to protect it.